everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So there are some movies that when they're going to come out, I really pull for them. I really hope that they're going to become successful, because if a certain movie is successful, maybe other movies and other upcoming projects can piggyback on them. For instance, if you have an original, sci-fi big budget movie that does really well, maybe we can have more of those. Maybe we can have more of, these creative, visionary sci-fi movies, being made for us if a movie of a similar, sort is successful. So I was really pulling for Jupiter Ascending when it was about to come out. And I was, really looking forward to it. But then the word on the street was that this movie was not very good. This was in fact quite abysmal. And I got a little bit, I don't know. So I did what most people did when it came to this movie. They stayed at home, and this became one of the biggest box office bombs of the decade. I saw this movie much later, and I will say this is a big hot mess. It's not garbage, but it is a big hot mess. This could have been fantastic with some tweaks here and there. Well, more of here and there everywhere, but there are aspects of this movie that is so great that the rest of it makes it such a frustrating experience to watch. So let's find out why this movie was so underwhelming, shall we? This is Jupiter Ascending. So Jupiter Jones, played by Mila Kunis, lives in Chicago along with her family, and they work as cleaning people, and we see her clean toilets a lot and stuff like that. And wait a minute, what was her name? Oh, Jupiter Jones. And when she's not busy cleaning toilets, Jupiter Jones? Oh dear, what kind of a stupid name is that? Well, we can set her, besides Anastasia Steele and Cypher Rage in the annals of that was a horrible name. But that is not, the biggest problem with this movie. Oh, she does have, the longing to, watch stars. So she's going to buy this telescope thing. And all of a sudden, she's attacked by these alien thingies. Because you see, there is this Abraxas family, two brothers and a sister, who is this intergalactical powerful family who sort of owns the universe, and they are harvesting people on Earth to use them for some kind of a serum thingy. It's basically the unobtainable thing from Avatar, Earth is slated for harvest, but there is this small little problem. It turns out that Jupiter Jones, tried to say that with a straight face by the way, is sort of the reborn incarnation of their mother kind of a thing. So she needs to either be destroyed or crowned the queen of the universe. So, the family members of the Abraxas are, after her. And when it looks like they're going to finish her off, in sweeps Channing Tatum with his anti-gravity boots, his ridiculous looking goatee and his Mr. Spock ears, and saves her together with Sean Bean. And, they tell her about who she really is, that, she actually owns planet Earth, and she's a bit of, you shouldn't, take me, I'm not the chosen one, I'm just some nobody and stuff like that. Now a lot of people want her dead, and other people want to see her crowned as the queen of the universe or whatever it is. And she starts this journey together with Channing Tatum, and let's see what happens. So this is quite a mouthful, to say the least. Okay, so the major problem with this movie is I do not like Mila Kunis, for starters. I don't like Channing Tatum either. He can be good in some movies if, you have good materials written for him. You can make him to quite a compelling character, or even a really funny guy. They have never been able to do that with Mila Kunis. It always seems like she's bored out of her skull and wishes she were somewhere else except on the set of this movie or any other movie that she has ever been on. There has been some small exceptions here and there which isn't terrible, but I always feel like I could replace you with basically anybody and it would be better. But it is not entirely her fault that Jupiter Jones is such a horrendously awful character, because she's horrendously badly written. She has to say these stupid ass lines, we'll get to them in a second, and her character is also completely devoid of any form of motivation. She doesn't want to do anything, she doesn't inspire to do anything, she doesn't really do anything. The most action that she takes during the entire movie, I think, is the fact that she at one point doesn't want to have that dress, she wants to have something else to wear that is a little bit more practical. And that's about it. So we have two main characters that has very, very bad chemistry together. I mean, they don't have Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston levels of bad chemistry, or for that matter, Padme and Anakin levels of bad chemistry, but it's still not very good. But this can all be, worked out if we have a very good villain. So what villain do we have for this movie? Do we have a, goatee wearing, scenery chewing, John Travolta spewing a lot of nonsense around him and being, overacting and, stuff like that? Nope, we don't have that. We don't have any, interesting, troubled, power-hungry, but yet likable and kind of relatable Christian Bale or something like that. We have Eddie Redmayne. I don't like Eddie Redmayne either, but if he could have been goodly written, and if he could have, had a good character to sink his teeth in, maybe it could have worked. But he is the #1 reason why this movie does not work. I have an internal list of the worst villains of all time, and at #1 at that thing sits Eddie Redmayne from this movie. He spends most of this movie looking utterly bored and are, whispering in an unthreatening way this nonsense and this bullshit, and that is about 95% of his dialogue. But 5% of his dialogue, he's channeling his inner John Travolta from Battlefield Earth, or his inner Al Pacino, or his inner Jeremy Irons from Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. And he just yells out these almost Tourette syndrome-esque things. Go! I create life! And I destroy it. And for the rest of the time, he just sounds like this. Like he's going to tell you something important, and then he doesn't do it. And when he started, talking like this, I said, is that what you're going to sound like throughout the entire movie? And when it turned out that it was going to, I was like, oh, shit. And so we have an uninteresting hero, an uninteresting side character, the worst villain in the history of cinema. How do we salvage this now? Now, I will say this to this movie's defense, that it looks great. The scenes are gorgeous. The set designs are fantastic. The wardrobe amazing. Makeup breathtaking, and the visual storytelling is fantastic, until you realize that they have basically stolen every design and every set and all these things that we see. They have basically stolen that from other movies that are better than this one. It makes the Wachowskis seem more like copycats rather than the visionary filmmakers that we all thought that they were back, when The Matrix was the hottest thing ever. Speaking about The Matrix, The Matrix has basically lots of the same problems as this movie has. This movie is drowned in an avalanche of exposition, bad exposition I might add. Basically, what is that? Well, that is this. What is that? That is this. Why did this happen? Well, because that happened. And that is basically the entirety of what this movie has when it comes to the dialogue. They had that in, The Matrix, but at least The Matrix had awesome action sequences, some of which were so cool and so amazing that you totally forgot all about the, lamer things that was in The Matrix. Here, we are interrupted by mundane, uninteresting, lightweight action sequences with no oomph to it, and everything just looks the same, feels the same. There are no stakes in this one and no weight to the damn thing. The first sequence, you know, when they have this chase thing in Chicago, it looked, you know, when the whole thing started, ooh, this is kind of a cool and inventive action sequence, but the longer it went, the less interesting it got, and I got, this is just bland and boring. The PG-13 rating certainly doesn't help. And this movie has such a bad bunch of characters. I think it is the worst case of bad characters in any movie that I have seen with a budget over $10 million. I mean, it isn't the worst casted movie of all time. That distinction would of course go to Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, but that is a movie I've already, you know, reviewed at one point. So, and after all of this, you could maybe still have salvaged this movie if they could have delivered a great ending, because there is a lot of interesting aspects of this movie. You mean the political incarnation and the squabbling in between the you know, family members of the Abraxas family, and you know, the mythological parts of this thing. It could be made into a very, very compelling story, and it could become a very good finished product if you finish this one in a great way. I don't know if I could create a worse ending than they did in this movie. I don't know if I could create a lamer and less satisfying conclusion to this movie than what they did. I don't know. It is difficult to figure out a worse ending than what they did. They also had a tendency of rehashing the same plotline 2 or 3 times in the entire movie. And it became very stale, and it became repetitive, and it became boring, and I didn't care. I didn't care if Jupiter Jones was going to be sodomized with a rusty fishing knife or something like that. I would basically say, do you need more fishing knives or something like that, because it just was so boring. I don't know how you can make something that looks so exciting and so big and so spectacular and so epic this boring, because the movie isn't epic. The movie doesn't feel epic. The movie is treated like it is epic, but it isn't. So what we are left with is an empty hollow of a movie, a lot of good ideas and a lot of great visual storytelling. Oh, I should mention the one thing that this movie does that is actually really good. This movie has a fantastic soundtrack. It has a corking soundtrack. I love the soundtrack. If you somehow could make this movie just be the visual storytelling and the music, you would get something that would be very compelling. Then you would have drowned out all of these horrible exposition and the terrible lines that they have to say. Because Jupiter Ascending contributes a couple of real stinkers to the Hall of Fame when it comes to the worst lines delivered in a movie of all time. I mean, we have Bees Are Drawn to Royalty. I love dogs. I always loved dogs, to, you know, things like, it is bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. You're robbing this place? What a perfect idea. My suit just turned black. I kind of like it, but I think it is something bad. When the bread lands jelly side down, it means that the devil is near. When you were still learning to spell your name, I was conquering galaxies. It's turkey time. Paco Paco. Another legendary missteps in the annals of horrible lines in history. So, in short, I would say that Jupiter Ascending is a very underwhelming movie. If you compare it to The Matrix, it does share a lot of, you know, the problems that they have in that movie, but they were able to combat that thing with a more compelling story. And the fact is that, you know, it was 3 movies. Jupiter Ascending feels like they have crammed 6 or 7 movies into the same thing, and they're rushing things in such a way that you never are able to breathe and think about what this means. They have, you know, this homage to Brazil, and Terry Gilliam has a cameo in it, and they basically have an entirely different movie, you know, in 1.5, 2 minutes. That has nothing to do with what happens before that or after that. It is totally forgotten, but it feels like a completely different movie, which was more compelling than what they did before or after. So it is a frustrating movie to watch because there is so much money crammed into this thing, and they have tried so hard to make this into this very, very awesome and awe-inspiring sci-fi movie. But the thing is also that they take this so serious, and they take it so serious, and it is so pretentious, and at the same time we have these goofy sequences that feels like it is taken from a completely different movie. So the movie is a bit schizophrenic and nothing really works. And I don't even think that, just replacing Mila Kunis and Channing Tatum in this movie would have, fixed anything. It would have made the movie more palatable, I think. The problem is still the characters. I don't think you could have had Margot Robbie and Leonardo DiCaprio in this movie, and they could have done anything good with what they had to work with. It is basically a movie that is dead on arrival, and they're trying so hard to salvage anything out of it, and it didn't succeed with any of it. It is a movie that is gorgeous to look at, that has some okay idea, but has a terrible villain, has an awful ending, has characters you don't care the least about, and it's just hollow and uninteresting, and it is a frustrating thing because I wanted this to be so successful. I wanted this to be a good Wachowski movie. If you want to see a really good Wachowski movie of more later date, I love Cloud Atlas. Cloud Atlas is a vastly underrated movie. It has many of the same problems as this movie has, but the sum of its parts elevates the entire thing. The sum of the parts in this movie just dragged this movie down with it, like having 6 anchors attached to you instead of having 6 helium balloons, as which was the case with Cloud Atlas. I'm just very, very frustrated when I think about this movie. It aimed so high and it fell so short of it. What should have been a fantastic philosophical and complex space opera is a flat, uninteresting sci-fi movie with lackadaisical characters, fantastic visual storytelling that is horrendously unoriginal. Sure, the soundtrack is fantastic, but when you have all of these boring ass things happening and the movie seems to go nowhere and everywhere at the same time, I just get annoyed by the whole thing. I have no other options but to give this movie 19 points. The soundtrack, fantastic. The visual, fantastic. Everything else sucks. And Eddie Redmayne is probably the main reason why this movie 100% does not work. This movie almost falls into the so bad that it is good category, but it cannot still pull it off because it is so boring for the most of it. I will also give the movie a bit of a credit for not being over long. 127 minutes is okay. The movie never overstays its welcome, but on the other hand, if we could have had more time, maybe we could have had a more compelling story. But on the other hand, considering what they had done so far, it probably just would have been even more repetitiveness and even more boring exposition being piled on top of us. So I think we probably should be thankful for the sort of restraint they at least put on themselves when it came to the runtime of this damn thing. So what do you think about Jupiter Ascending? Comment below. I'll see you next time from, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.